as a Daniel Day-Lewis or a Gary
Right.
Oldman who disappears into it.
Right.
But he's so clearly different.
Mm-hmm.
He acts the shit out of things. I'm never worried when they cast James McAvoy in a role that like in this movie. It's a lot to ask of an actor to have like a surprise hit movie that you now have to come in and copy the acting choices of a child and make them work. And I wasn't worried about him, or really they cast people that really I wasn't worried about any of them.
No, like the casting was so solid in this movie. Apparently,
and they all did a great job.
They,
like my lack of worry was warranted.
yes. I mean, they all did a great job. The kid actors were phenomenal again.
Right.
I mean, they're just the actress who plays Beverly,
the young Beverly.
I mean, she's got such a bright future. I hope she sticks. You know, young actors always have such a hard path,
right?
But if she sticks through it, she's going to be something special. She is so good in these movies.
She did something else. I want to say Nancy Drew, some sort of Nancy Drew related project. That I haven't heard anything else on, so maybe.
I still think it's funny that Finn Wolfhard, when they asked who he wants to play his character, he was like, oh, Bill Hader.
Well, she did too.
Yeah, and Beverly
Lillis
was like Jessica Chastain. It's gotta be. It's so good, though, that they got them to do that.
Yes, she was in a Nancy Drew movie as Nancy Drew.
As Nancy Drew? Holy crap.
Wow.
That's amazing.
But I've not heard anything about it. And it is already out.
Ooh, boy.
But also, I'm not exactly in the demographic of people watching a Nancy Drew movie.
That is fair. That is very fair.
Anyway.
Something I wanted to bring up was the editing. I mean...
Well, just like the first one.
Yeah,
it's continued to be great.
If you listen to our first episode, well, not our first episode, but our first episode on episode on chapter 1, we raved about the cinematography of it. I mean, this one is at that level, if not better.
Oh, for sure.
I feel just the cinematography of the angles they use. There's a tracking shot that follows James McAvoy into a funny house, and as it enters the rotating front room, it tracks the rotating of the room. And it's one of the most gorgeous shots that I've ever seen. It was so beautiful because it has such...
And so damn scary at the same time.
God, yeah. But I mean, it just has such a assured confidence as it begins, and then instantly is ripped away as the world rotates around. And just, it was so unnerving, and it felt so, like, disturbing. It was so great. And the other scene that caught me was with Bill Hader in the park. And the hue of the scene shifted to a cold cyan. And it just instantly, and that's more on the editing, but just it was so poignant of just, it felt sick and unease, and it really emphasized the turmoil in Richie, the character Richie. It just, I would have never thought, let's change the hue of the scene. Like,
right.
Like, that's something that doesn't, like, you alter the hue to make it look better.
Not to make it look worse. Well, I mean...
But what I'm saying is...
I feel like that is a trope of horror that is never used that way.
Right.
Which is great.
You don't actively see the hue shift.
Right.
Like, they'll shift the hue of the film to...
That scene was one of my favorite scenes in this whole movie.
Really?
Do you want to know why?
Please do tell.
Because in that scene, we got like 5 seconds of screen time with the entire back of that Pennywise costume very clearly on screen. Do you know how many frames that costume's back is visible in the first one? Because I do. I've paused on all of them to try and get that detail. And now I have just so much to work with.
The costume design for Pennywise is so good.
It's so good. Someday. Now that I have a full reference of the back of the costume.
I'm always impressed with, when I went back and watched Chapter 1 and then now watching Chapter 2, there's so many scenes that could have easily been CG.
Yeah.
But they weren't.
Right.
And you look at set photos of Bill Skarsgård in his Pennywise, and that's him.
Yeah.
They add prosthetics to his forehead and
right.
stuff like that. But that's the character that is on set.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's amazing and terrifying. There's one photo where it's literally Bill Skarsgård kind of going like that, and Bill Hader. They're obviously by the snack table, and Bill Hader's just like he obviously got startled by him. And it's so funny because they're offset, off camera, and it's Pennywise. The costume and the makeup are just so intricate and perfect.
Well, one of the things that I'd heard is that Bill Skarsgård had a blast on this because he was kept away from the kids in the first shoot because they wanted to have the kids still be frightened of the character. They didn't want him to, who's apparently a nice guy, ruin the illusion by being nice to them in costume.
Yeah.
So he got to hang out with the adults because they were really not as worried about Jessica Chastain not being able to act if she saw that he was...
Because James McAvoy can act
So
scared,
he got to, hang out with people in his costume.
Everything I've seen of Bill Skarsgård, he just seems like the sweetest man.
Yeah.
Just a sweet guy that can look horrifying.
Terrifying.
It still blows me away that his offset eye is something he can
him.
just do.
Yeah.
That's
terrifying.
The ending scene when they finally kill it. I think that's also that's a throwback to the first one of when it's first introduced in the storm drain. Because when he dies, his left eye focuses completely on the screen, the camera.
Oh.
And it focuses directly on the audience. And the whole first movie, I believe, his offset eye is focused on the camera. It's focused on the audience. And the second one, there's less of that.
Sure.
And when he finally dies, he's making eye contact off the screen, and then his left eye locks on the camera.
It's effective.
Yeah, it's so effective. And it throws in that context of he's dead in the movie, but
sure.
Is he not really dead? It's so good. I just wish it wasn't 3 hours long. Because this is a movie that I wouldn't mind just sitting down and watching. But I wouldn't.
Well, watching both of them
hours.
together is just over 5 hours.
Yeah.
Which is
That's so much.
It's not something that we're not going to do. Let's be realistic. How many times have the two of us watched all of the extended edition Lord of the Rings movies together?
More than I'm willing to admit. But
But I also agree I don't want it to be 3. I either want it to be 2 or 4. I would honestly rather the 4, honestly.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where it's I'm normally against studios breaking movies into thirds.
Sure.
But
you were kind of
with this one, I would rather have 3 2-hour movies.
I think it would be hard to delineate where that third would start. But thematically, the cut is so clear this way.
And you're very right. Because I don't think they could do 3. Mm-hmm. I'm just using it as a time thing because it's so much easier to watch 6 hours over 3 portions than 5 hours over 2.
Right. Sure.
And I don't see how they could re-edit it.
No,
make it,
That's what I'm saying. I don't see how they could trim much without flattening storylines.
Right. Honestly,
But
I would in a heartbeat buy the extended edition.
which I hear is on its way. A full supercut
That'd be
is
amazing.
evidently in the works.
Like
All
chapter
of,
1 and 2
yeah, not
together?
yes,
Or?
not spliced in like book style where it flashes back and forth,
Right.
but more
it's...
blended into big ol' solid fucking block.
Damn.
There are apparently even scenes that Andy Muschietti wants to still film for said supercuts.
That would be amazing. Apparently there's a whole scene, like a 15-minute scene that was cut that was kind of the origins of it. Like because they did a bit of it with the infographics essentially with the...
Which I thought was the strongest CG point in the whole film.
Yeah.
Because their sort of mediocre CG was still in it.
Mm-hmm. I mean...
I'm starting to think that it is a choice
Yeah.
in the vein of Tim Burton's Magenta Blood, where it heightens the fantasy of it instead of bringing it into gore horror. Gorer.
No, and I think I agree with you on that one, where I think it is a stylistic choice rather than
a failing.
a limitation or a failing. Yeah.
Especially since their budget was so much higher for this movie than the first.
To be fair, though, their amount cost on acting
Right,
also quadrupled.
That's true.
But I mean, I think they over-earned chapter 1 by like $100 million
It's like
or
the
something
highest
like that.
grossing horror film of all time, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some crazy thing like that.
Let me look that up. Like,
Fact check us as we go.
yeah.
We can edit it out because you have all the time in the world before Wednesday.
Yeah, its production budget was $35 million. Mm-hmm. It earned $327 million. So it earned $300 million more than it cost to make it.
That's incredible.
So it had a bit of a budget for the second one.
Do you know what the budget for the second one was?
Not known yet, but it's opening week. It's at $91 million.
But do you know what the budget was?
Yeah, it's
Still
unknown.
not known? Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Big old NA on Box Office Mojo.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
It's number 1 in 4,500 theaters.
I mean, honestly, I have a lot of respect for these movies. That they've done a weird mix of being, from what I've heard, thematically true to the source material, being artistically true to what they wanted to make out of the source material, and making a good fucking movie out of both of those things combined.
Yeah.
That is a difficult thing that not many directors are able to accomplish.
No, it was a very interesting blend of horror and comedy, and I mean they flat out call it when Richie's like, I'm just trying to add levity to the situation. Like there was a lot of levity breaks in it, which honestly chapter 1 and 2 are very good entry points into the horror genre because it's very light on the horror element of it.
This one, I'm not good at jump scares.
Mm-hmm.
I can handle all the psychological creeping elements of horror that you can throw at me, but I am not good at jump scares. And the first one had more lingering fear after the movie. The second one, like, I watched it, I jumped on my skin a few times, but once I left the theater, I wasn't, like, worried walking to my car alone or walking into my apartment. You know, like, there wasn't that lingering sense of unease after this, which I don't think is a problem, especially since it's the happy ending that wraps up the story. Mm-hmm. But I think they wisely wrote it not as a genre film, as ridiculous as that sounds when you're adapting a Stephen King property. It's obviously going to be horror, but I think they worried more about the story than the genre.
Which I think paid off.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and to that note, like, it it's hard to classify this film because of that.
Right.
And I think it's better for it. I don't know. I think we've fallen into a